Anxious for nothing. Section 2. Ask God for help. Let your requests be made known unto God. Chapter 5. Contagious Calm. You may spend a semester carrying a heavy class load, or you may fight the headwinds of the recession. You might spend night after night at the bedside of an afflicted child or aging parent. You may fight to keep a family together, a business afloat, a school from going under. You may be tempted to press the button and release. Anger outbursts, a rash of accusations, a furious retaliation of hurtful words. Unchecked anxiety releases a load of destruction. How many people has been wounded as a result of unbridled stress? And how many disasters have been averted because one person refused to buckle under the strain? It is this composer Paul is summoning in the first of the trade of proclamations. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything. Philippians 4:5-6 in the NIV. The Greek word translated here as gentle describes a temperament that is seasoned and mature. It is envisioned attitude that is fitting to the occasion, level-headed and temperate. The gentle reaction is one of even-handedness, fairness. It looks humanly and reasonably at the facts of the case. Its opposite would be an overreaction or a sense of panic. This gentleness is evident to all. Family members take notes. Your friends sense the difference. Co-workers benefit from it. Others might freak out or run out. But the gentle person is sober-minded and clear-thinking, contagiously calm. The contagiously calm person is the one who reminds others that God is in control. This is the executive who tells the company, let's all do our parts. We'll be okay. This is the leader who sees the challenges, acknowledges it, and observes. These are the tough times, but we'll get through them. Gentleness. Where do we quarry this gem? How can you and I keep our hands away from the trigger? How can we keep our hands when everyone else is losing theirs? We plummet the depths of the second phase. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Be not anxious about anything. Philippians 4:5-6 in the NIV. The Lord is near. You are not alone. You may feel alone. You may think you're alone. But there is never a moment in which you face life without help. God is near. God repeatedly pledged his proverbial presence to his people. To Abram, God said, do not be afraid. I am your shield, your excellent great reward. Genesis 15:1. To Hagar, the angel announced, do not be afraid. God has heard. Genesis 21:17 in the NIV. When Isaac was expelled from his land by the Philippines and forced to move from place to place, God appeared to him and reminded him, be not afraid, for I am with you. Genesis 26:24 in the NLT version. After Moses' death, God told Joshua, do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you, wherever you go. Joshua 1:9 NIV. God was with David in spite of his adultery, with Jacob in spite of his conniving, with Elijah in spite of his lack of faith. Then, in the ultimate declaration of communication, God called himself Emmanuel, which means God with us. He became flesh, he became sin, he defeated the grave. He is still with us. In the form of his Spirit, he comforts, teaches, and convicts. Do not assume God is watching from a distance. Avoid the quicksand that bears the marker God has left you. Do not indulge this lie. If you do, your problems will be amplified by the sense of loneliness. It's one thing to face a challenge, but to face it all alone? Isolations create a downward cycle of fret. Choose instead to be the person who clutches the presence of God with both hands. The Lord is with me. I will not be afraid. What can mere mortals do to me? Psalms 118:6 in the NIV. Because the Lord is near, we can be anxious for nothing. This is Paul's point. Remember, he was writing a letter. He did not use chapters and verse numbers. This system was created by scholars in the 13th and 16th century. The structure helps us, but it can also hinder us. The apostle intended the words of verse 5 and 6 to be read in one scoop. The Lord is near. Consequently, do not be afraid about anything. Early commenters saw this. John liked to phrase the verse this way, the Lord is at hand, have no anxiety. Another translated the words to this, the Lord is near, have no worries. We can calmly take our concerns to God because he is near as our next breath. This was the assuring lesson from the miracle of the bread and fish. In an event created to craft to an anxious heart, Jesus told his disciples to do the impossible, feed 5,000 people. Jesus lifted up his eyes, and seeing a great multitude coming towards him, he said to Philip, where shall we buy bread, that these may eat? But this he said to test him, for he himself knew what he would do. John 6:5-6. When John describes this gathering as a great multitude, he was serious. There was 5,000 men, plus women and children. Matthew 14:21. Imagine a crowd at a sports area, and you get the picture. Jesus was willing to feed the entire crowd. The disciples, on the other hand, watched to get rid of everyone. Send the multitudes away that they may go into the village and buy themselves food. Matthew 14:15. I detect some anxiety in their words. I sense a tone of aggravation, frustration. They don't call Jesus master. They don't come to him with a suggestion. They march as a group to Christ and tell him what to do. The disciples see a valley full of hungry people. Growling stomachs will soon become scowling faces, and the disciples might have a riot on their hands. They had every reason to feel unsettled. Then again, did they not have equal reason to feel at peace? By this point in their experience with Jesus, they had seen him heal leprosy, Matthew 8:3, heal the servant without going to the servant's bedside, Matthew 8:13, heal Peter's mother-in-law, Matthew 8:15, calm a violent sea, Matthew 8:26, heal a pandemic, Matthew 9:6-7, heal a woman who had been sick for 12 years, Matthew 9:22, raise a girl from the dead, Matthew 9:25, drive out an evil spirit, Mark 1:25, heal a demon-possessed man in the cemetery, Mark 5:15, change water into wine, John 2:9, and heal the man who has been invalid for 38 years, John 5:9. Did any of the disciples pause long enough to think, well, Jesus healed the sick people, raised the dead girl, and calmed the angry waves. I wonder, might he have a solution that we may not see? After all, he's standing right here. Let's ask him. Did it not occur to anyone to ask Jesus for help? The stunning answer is no. They acted as if Jesus wasn't even present. Rather than count Christ, they had the audacity to tell the creator of the world that nothing could be done because they wouldn't have enough money. How did Jesus maintain his composure? How did he keep from looking at the disciples and saying, have you forgotten who I am? Finally, a boy offered his lunch basket to Andrew, who tentatively mentioned the offer to Jesus. Jesus said, have the people sit down. There was plenty of grass in the place. When they sat down, about 500 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves and gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. And when they had all had enough to eat, he said to the disciples, gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted. So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of 5 barley loaves left over by those who have eaten. John 6:10-13 in the NIV. Not one coin was spent. They started the day with 200 coins. They ended the day with 200 coins. In addition, they filled 12 baskets with leftover food, a souvenir for each apostle, perhaps. The people were fed. The bank accounts was untouched. And we have a lesson to learn. Anxiety is needless because Jesus is near. You aren't facing 500 hungry bellies, but you're facing a deadline in 2 days, a loved one in need of a cure, a child who's been bullied in school, a spouse entwined in temptation. On one hand, you have a problem. On the other, you have a limited quality of wisdom, energy, patience, or time. What you have is nowhere near what you need. You have a thimbleful and you have a bucket load. Typically, you get anxious. You tell God to send the problems packing. You've given me too much to handle, Jesus. This time, instead of starting with what you have, start with Jesus. Start with His wealth, His resources, and His strength. Before you open the ledger, open your heart. Before you count coins or count heads, count the number of times Jesus has helped you face the impossible. Before you lash out in fear, look up in faith. Take a moment. Turn to your Father for help. In his fine book, The Dance of Hope, Billy Frey remembers the day he tried to pull a stump out of the Georgia dirt. He was 11 years old at the time. One of the chores was gathering of firewood for the smallest stove and fireplace of his homestead. He would search the woods for stumps of pine trees that would cut down and chop down into kindling. The best stumps were saturated with resin and therefore would burn more easily. One day I found a large stump in an open field near the house and tried to unearth it. I literally pushed and pulled and crowbarred for hours, but the root system was too deep and so large I simply couldn't pull it out of the ground. I was still struggling when my father came home from his office and spotted me working, came over. I think I see your problem, he said. What's that? I asked. You're not using all your strength, he replied. I exploded and told him how hard I've been working and for how long. No, he said, you're not using all your strength. When I cooled down, I asked him what he meant, and he said, you haven't asked me to help you yet. This business of anxiety management is like pulling stumps out of the ground. Some of our worries have a deep root system. Extracting them is hard work. In fact, it may be one of the toughest challenges of all, but you don't have to do it alone. Present the challenge to your father and ask for help. Will he solve the issue? Yes, he will. Will he solve it immediately? Maybe. Or maybe part of the test is an advanced course in patience. This much is sure. Contagious calm will happen to the degree that we turn to him.